Hi, thanks for watching BibleMountain.com. One of the ongoing debates within Christianity is whether or not Christians need to observe the Sabbath. Or another way to put it is it okay to work on Sunday? Well, first we have to understand that the command against working the Sabbath is only found in the Mosaic Law. And we're going to see in Exodus 31 that the Sabbath restriction only applied to the Israelites. And then we'll see in Acts 15 that Christians do not need to observe the law of Moses, and so the conclusion would be that Christians do not need to observe the Sabbath. So let's take a closer look at all this, and let's start in Genesis 2, verse 2. By the seventh day God completed his work which he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had done. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. So notice here we're told that God rested on the seventh day and he sanctified the seventh day and consecrated it. However, what's not in these verses is a command telling people not to work on the Sabbath. That came later in the Mosaic Law. So let's take a look at that in Exodus 31. We'll start reading at verse 12. The context here is the Israelites are at Mount Sinai and God is giving them the Mosaic Law. So let's start reading at verse 12. Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "But as for you, speak to the sons of Israel, saying, You shall surely observe my Sabbaths, for this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am Yahweh who sanctifies you." So we see here that this command was given to the sons of Israel. This was not given to all of humanity in general. It was specifically given to the sons of Israel. The command was that they had to observe the Sabbaths. The reason for this was the Sabbath was a sign, and it was a sign between Yahweh and the Israelites. The pronoun you refers to the Israelites. Verse 14. Therefore you are to observe the Sabbath, for it is holy to you. Everyone who profanes it shall surely be put to death, for whoever does any work on it, that person shall be cut off from among his people. Notice the word death. The consequences for working on the Sabbath was to be put to death. So obviously this was something that the Israelites were supposed to take very seriously. Verse 15. For 6 days work may be done, but on the seventh day there is a Sabbath of complete rest, holy to Yahweh. Whoever does any work on the Sabbath day shall surely be put to death. So the sons of Israel shall observe the Sabbath, to celebrate the Sabbath throughout their generations as a perpetual covenant. So it repeats here the prohibition and also the punishment. Anyone who worked on the Sabbath day was supposed to be put to death. And again we see the phrase sons of Israel reminding us that this commandment was given just to the sons of Israel, just to the Israelites. It was not something that was given to humanity in general. Verse 17. It is a sign between me and the sons of Israel forever, for in 6 days Yahweh made heaven and earth, but on the seventh day he ceased from labor and was refreshed. When he had finished speaking with him upon Mount Sinai, he gave Moses the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone, written by the finger of God. So we see again that the Sabbath was a sign between Yahweh and the sons of Israel, not between Yahweh and all of humanity. It was specifically a sign between Yahweh and the sons of Israel. Now let's take a look at Acts 15, and we'll see here Christians do not need to observe the Mosaic Law. Let's start reading at verse 1. Some men came down from Judea and began teaching the brethren, "Unless you are circumcised according to the custom of Moses, you cannot be saved." And when Paul and Barnabas had great dissension and debate with them, the brethren determined that Paul and Barnabas and some others of them should go up to Jerusalem to the apostles and elders concerning this issue. Therefore, being sent on their way by the church, they were passing through both Phoenicia and Samaria, describing in detail the conversion of the Gentiles, and were bringing great joy to all the brethren. So notice the word Gentiles. Paul and Barnabas were describing how many Gentiles were becoming believers, and that was part of the problem. As the Gentiles came into the church, this question came up, do these Gentiles have to obey the law of Moses? Verse 4. When they arrived at Jerusalem, they were received by the church and the apostles and the elders, and they reported all that God had done with them. But some of the sect of the Pharisees who had believed stood up, saying, "It is necessary to circumcise them and to direct them to observe the law of Moses." So here we see a reference to some Pharisees. They stood up and these were specifically Pharisees who were believers. But these Pharisees said that it was necessary for the Gentile believers to be circumcised, one, and then also to observe the law of Moses. And so this was the great debate that they were having. As the Gentiles started becoming believers and joining the church, was it necessary for them also to become Jews and to obey and observe the law of Moses? Verse 6. The apostles and the elders came together to look into this matter. And so this is the point of chapter 15. It's telling us about this meeting that they had where all the apostles and elders got together to answer this question, do the Gentile believers need to observe the law of Moses? Eventually they came to a conclusion. I'm not going to read the whole debate, but we'll fast forward here to the end of this passage. Once they came to a conclusion, they wrote a letter to the Gentiles to tell them about their conclusion. And that's what we see here in verse 28. For it seemed good to the Holy Spirit and to us to lay upon you no greater burden than these essentials, that you abstain from things sacrificed to idols, and from blood, and from things strangled, and from fornication. If you keep yourselves free from such things, you will do well. Farewell. So they said that the Gentiles only had to do these few essentials, and the essentials had to do things with idols, food with blood in it, and also things strangled and fornication. So there's nothing here about the Sabbath. And so the conclusion was the Gentiles did not need to be circumcised. The Gentiles did not need to observe the law of Moses as they became believers and became part of the church. So as I said, this was an ongoing debate back then, and it's an ongoing debate today. Do Christians need to observe the Sabbath? Is it okay to work on Sunday? And as we saw, the command against working on the Sabbath is only found in the Mosaic Law. Exodus 31 reminds us the Sabbath only applied to the Israelites. Acts 15 tells us Christians do not need to observe the law of Moses. And so the conclusion for us is that we do not need to observe a Sabbath. If you haven't joined my email list yet, please do so. First of all, it is free. By signing up, you get immediate access to all my free content. It'll be delivered right to your email inbox. This is the best way to make sure you don't miss out on any of my free content. In order to sign up, go to BibleMountain.com, click on follow. There will be a place there to enter your email address. Once again, thank you for watching BibleMountain.com.